So I remember chasing him, and I chased him northbound on County Road 1. I chased him into Amberley subdivision, and they wrecked. There was a ton of blood inside the car. The car was just covered with blood inside, and it wasn't from the wreck. And so what it turned out, they had just done an armed robbery, but the car was stolen, and they had murdered the owner of the car.
You're listening to 56, a Pinellas County Sheriff's Office podcast. I'm Ricky Butler with Laura Sullivan and Ashley Cooley. We have got the show of all shows today with the guest of all guests because we are excited to have Sheriff Bob Gualtieri joining us today on 56. Before we get him in here, though, a fun story. Not that the fun's going to stop.
I hope not.
No, it's
I'm
not.
here for the fun.
Oh, well, yeah, that's what we're all here for, but except him, I think.
As long, yeah, I was going to say, as long as he is.
So every time we do something new, like a podcast, we pitch to the sheriff.
Yeah.
And over the years, we've pitched a lot of stuff to the sheriff. And the best rule of thumb, if you have to go talk to the sheriff about something, is to think about how much you should prepare and then prepare twice as much as you think you should. Although sometimes he's just like, yep, sounds good, which is fortunately what happened with the podcast. So I go through, he lets me go through like the whole pitch, and then he's like, yep, sounds good. What are y'all going to talk about? I explained to him, okay, sounds good. And I was like, this awkward pause. And he's like, who's going to be first? And I'm like, oh, Detective Ron Chalmers. And he's like, oh, okay. And then kind of moved on, right? So I'm like, you know, I mean, of course we want to talk to the sheriff, but he's a busy guy. We didn't know how this was going to go. So
We wouldn't presume.
No.
No.
So fast forward to a couple months ago, and he's in my office, and on my board, in my whiteboard, I've kind of got our next couple episodes mapped out, and then some brainstorming ideas and things on there. And he's like, oh, it looks like you got people coming up with the podcast. I'm like, yeah. He's like, oh, it's a pretty good group. I've never been asked. And I'm like, I spun around in my chair, and I called Sharon, the executive assistant, and said, give me a couple hours on his calendar, and boom, here we are. So Sheriff Bob Gualtieri is joining us today on 56.
I figured he wouldn't be doing the asking, he'd be doing the telling. So I was just waiting to be told that he was going to be.
Right. But, you know, he lets us do our thing, which we appreciate. So a little bit about him, and really the only stat that anybody really needs to know, because he is out there quite a bit. He's been described as a lot of things over the years by the media, a lightning rod, you know, somebody that finds his way into some of the biggest law enforcement related discussions across the country. But we're going to focus on him today, not talk about all that stuff. But so there are two national organizations for sheriffs. So there's the National Sheriff's Association, which represents all 3,100 roughly sheriffs across the country. And then there's Major County Sheriffs of America, which represents, I think, about 110 sheriffs that are from major counties. Really creative with the name there. So he has been selected as Sheriff of the Year by both of those organizations, NSA in 2019 and MCSA in 2022. So that's pretty cool. We're really lucky to have him with us in Pinellas County, and I'm not just saying that because he signs all of our paychecks. But we're lucky to have him, and we're even more fortunate to have him joining us on 56. Sheriff Bob Gualtieri, welcome to 56. Thank you for joining us. As you know, because you're an avid listener, we start off, Ashley has kind of an icebreaker question for you. We have never heard the question, so she's going to ask it, and we're all going to be scared together.
So why do you think we had to break the ice here?
We do it with everybody, so don't make it about you. We like to break the ice with everybody.
Okay, go ahead.
Have a good time.
So I told them this is my anxiety pillow. It is not.
Today there is
some visual aids.
So I heard that last one. I think it was, would you rather be in an elevator or on a roller coaster or something stuck? Yes.
What would you pick?
Oh, the elevator.
Really?
The roller coaster doesn't do it for me.
Yeah.
The way the elevators are around here, you never know.
Yeah.
We got the slowest ones we could.
Yep.
I think they got on Amazon and ordered, slowest descending order, and bam.
With incoming phone calls, no less.
Yeah.
Have you gotten one
You
of
ever gotten a
those?
scam call in the elevator?
No.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, that's happened to me like 2 or 3 times.
Captive audience. I got to give it to him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, your visual
Start
aid.
talking. You ready?
Yeah, we're getting
Okay.
off track here. Oh, God.
Ricky.
What the hell is that?
These are. It's an individual question for each person.
Okay.
What kind of music was this guy listening to at this time?
Oh, you got a picture of him? Is that how
I
this is
do.
going?
But I had to start with this one because, damn,
Yeah.
Yeah.
that is so fun.
Yeah. I love that picture.
I don't know. I've always listened to older stuff, so
Yeah.
probably the same stuff I'm listening to now. So probably the Eagles, stuff like that. Boston, Led Zeppelin,
There you
the
go.
old stuff. Yeah. All right, put that away.
Nice,
That's
nice.
terrifying.
Okay. Let's show.
Yeah, show the studio audience.
Right.
That's never going
look at your
anywhere.
boss.
Yeah, no. All
right.
We're done with that. You can actually turn that over.
Okay.
Whoa.
Whoa, no.
Oh, it keeps getting worse.
Where-
Okay, mine's not that bad.
Where the heck did you get that? I think that's like my passport picture from when I was 13. How did you get that?
Secrets.
Passport pictures. You get traffic
We
somewhere?
work in a place that can do things.
All right. That's nice on the phone board. That's
Yeah. So what kind of music were we listening to?
I might have been listening to like The Cure, Clan of Zymox.
I don't know.
Am I saying more words you don't know, Ricky?
yeah. No,
I know The Cure,
Yeah,
okay.
that other one sounds like a detergent.
Wow, my hair.
It doesn't look all that straight in this. Just gonna say.
Yeah.
There's a lot I could deconstruct there.
Okay. So anything else?
No,
right,
sorry.
All right.
All right.
This next one. This
All
is
right.
going to
Next
be.
one.
Now he's scared.
Oh,
Here you go.
yeah.
That's the one.
That's the one.
Been around.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What were you listening to on the radio around this time?
I have no idea.
No.
Couldn't tell you.
You just drove around in the car, listened to the police radio. That's it.
Yeah, pretty much.
Did it have a good beat?
I don't know about that. But
What about some of these other guys?
Yeah.
Any idea?
no idea.
Who do we got here in this, by the way? That's obviously Chief Stephan, retired
Yeah.
Chief Stephan. Who's the other guy?
A guy named Gary Swanhart, who is a narcotics detective.
All right.
Nice.
We didn't blur their faces. Is it okay?
Yes.
I think
So that's probably somewhere around 1993.
Oh yeah.
Yep.
nice.
All right.
All right, Ashley, where's yours?
I did.
Good.
Oh, I hope so.
I did. There we go.
Look at that.
There's me.
What were you listening to?
Very similar to you.
Okay.
Led Zeppelin was my jam. 70s, 80s rock, and then I really liked Bob Marley at the
Nice.
time. So yeah,
You didn't partake in any of that stuff.
I did
otherwise
not.
you wouldn't be with us.
I
here
did
on
not.
56, right?
but music is legit.
Yeah.
So
Good stuff.
Everybody else that you picked had good hair in their photo.
Except
me.
yeah, I was going to say, except you. All right.
what do you
I
mean?
had very 80s hair.
But that's
That's what it was.
Yeah,
I know.
All right.
know.
All right.
That almost doesn't even look like you, Ricky.
I know.
I
It
know.
also looks like it was taken in the 90s, which I know it was not.
It could have been. It might as I'm an old soul, so it could have been. We can put that away now.
80s.
We have we have other important things to talk about. All right, so
Fun.
that was actually a scary one. That was scary. As
Yeah.
soon as you
Yeah.
started pulling pictures out, I'm like, okay.
Yeah, I thought
so-
I was used to these icebreakers, but
Yeah,
I
that
don't
was-
trust you
I know.
anymore,
I
Ashley.
Visual aids.
I threw a curveball.
Yeah, visual aids. Wow.
Yeah, I don't need an anxiety pillow.
All right, so
You fooled me.
I did.
you did. You had us all fooled. Well, you're nervous to talk to the sheriff. All right, so Sheriff, a lot of people know a lot of things about you based on what's in the media, all that good stuff. We want to kind of really get to know you, talk about your past, your history, what brought you here, how you got here, and all that good stuff. So we'll start from the top. So you're born and raised in Syracuse.
Right.
What was your childhood like? Tell us about that.
Yeah, I mean, lived in the snow belt, cold weather, upstate New York. As they say, born and raised, and lived there until after high school, and then moved down here about 1980.
Okay, so, and your dad was the district attorney up there. Mm-hmm. So how was that? What was that like? Were you always well behaved because you want to get in trouble, or how'd that work out?
I was probably it's probably what influenced me to get involved in this work.
Mm-hmm.
He was the district attorney of Onondaga County, and my grandfather was a judge. Everybody were lawyers. Everybody's involved in the legal system.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd say, especially as a kid, probably what people would call today, rule follower. I didn't really get in trouble. Started working at a young age and just did my thing.
Where'd you work?
Grocery stores. Lots of them. That's what you did back then. And, as a young kid, had a paper route and didn't, out there shoveling snow and delivering papers at, 0 degrees and 6 feet of snow. But, and then started working in some big grocery store chains up there.
Mm-hmm. And then, so with your family involvement, I mean, were you always like law enforcement 100%? That's what I want to do?
Yeah, and I don't know where it came from. They say, when people are young and, they want to be a cop, want to be a fireman, and then it just kind of goes away. Well, I don't know. I said it never went away, So, and I was involved in the Explorer program and
Up there.
Yeah, up there, and did, the ride-alongs and all the stuff that goes with that, and just thought it was what I wanted to do, and it's the bug that just never went away. So I came down here and wanted to pursue it down here.
So what brought your family to Florida?
Just a variety of things. I think, both at that time, my mother and father both moved down here. I was young. They were here.
So they came down before you came down?
Yeah, actually, my father was down here first,
okay.
And then I came down, and then my mother came down after that. But, so he was here already and so I graduated from high school. As I always say, I did post-secondary education the hard way. I started going to community colleges up there. I didn't like it. Education wasn't really my thing back then. And, and then just decided it was time to get out of town and come south.
So you're saying you weren't a good student?
No, I wasn't a good student. I mean, I could do it. I just didn't like it. And so I could care less about it and just didn't do it, So, I graduated from high school.
That's good.
Yeah, sometimes I wonder how, but to be honest with you.
Now you come across as an intellectual.
Yeah,
that's the perception of you, I think.
For sure. Yeah, but I of course, I did it the hard way, and I encourage people not to do it the hard way. The easy way is you just keep going, and so when I came down here, I realized that at some point I needed to go down the education route. So people will ask, where did you go to college? And the easier answer to the question is, in the entire Tampa Bay region, is that where didn't I go? Because I stopped and started every place, from St. Leo to St. Pete College to USF,
everywhere.
Everywhere, you name it.
Like a hunter and gatherer of credits.
Yeah, because I needed it, but I didn't like it, so I just kept stop and start, and 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 then of course, as they would say, I guess the rest is history. And eventually I figured it out that I liked it. It wasn't so bad, but I did it later on, which is the hard way to do it.
So you guys landed in Pinellas County, but was the Pinellas County Sheriff's Office always something you were wanting to pursue?
No, I didn't know, back then. I was young. I was in my, I was 20, whatever, and really didn't, coming from the north. I guess up there, especially the sheriffs and the sheriff's offices up there are not the premier agencies like they are here in Florida. So I didn't really know the dynamic and the layout. And went through, back then, what still exists today, the Pinellas Police Applicant Screening Service was screens for everybody. So I first went through that and was looking to get hired by a city police department. So I went through PASS, as it's called, and applied everywhere. You just go after it, and that's pretty much what I did.
But you started at the jail.
I did. I started the jail because back then it was hard. A lot of agencies weren't hiring, and
so everybody starts in jail. Back then,
no.
Okay.
No. You could get hired on the road, but it was probably not the easiest thing, and they didn't have a lot of openings, and it was very competitive. And so I started in the jail because I knew somebody that was here that said they had openings like we do now. I mean, nothing's changed in the last 40 years, is that where do we have all our openings? In the jail. So if you want to get hired and you want to get your foot in the door, go start there. So, and a lot of people have done that. So yeah, I had applications out everywhere, Gulfport, Dunedin, and Clearwater, St. Pete. I mean, everywhere. You just pepper them out there, but nothing was happening. And then the jail opportunity came up, and so I said,
Why not?
Why not?
How was it?
No $15,000 signing bonus then, right?
Yeah. No. 20. It would have been 20 for him.
It's probably about $15,000 a year.
Yeah.
Seriously, it was.
Yeah.
And it was great. I couldn't imagine doing the job I do now without having had that time working back there, because it's like everything else. Is that some of the dynamics change, but police work today is the same as police work was 30 and 40 years ago. The technology changes, where you put the forms change, how you check the boxes change. But dealing with people, talking to people, dealing with domestics, making all that, it's no different today than it was back then. And working in the jail is no different. In fact, jail we have now in what we now call South Division, which we used to call the Max facility. So I actually started when the old Clearwater jail in downtown Clearwater was still open.
Okay.
And that was the new facility. And so we went out to the new facility, which was South Division. And I worked those floors, Charlie, Delta, Echo Wing, all that stuff. I worked those floors. I worked those pods. Mm-hmm. And it's no different. The cells are the same cells they were 40 years ago.
Literally,
so
some of them.
The same issue. No, literally. Nothing's changed. I think we might have changed a door here or there over the last 40 years. But other than that, and, dealing with inmates that don't like you is no different. So, it's a very valuable experience. And one of the things that's kind of an irony, I guess, is I remember people asking me back then. So I was like 20 years old. And I remember going to the orientation and then going through all that stuff. And people would ask, why do you want to be here in the jail? If you want to be a cop, you want to be on the street, why are you here? And I distinctly remember answering that question to a guy. I said, well, you never know what the future brings. It may help you out down the road. Mm-hmm. So, little did I know.
There you are.
Well, how true that would be.
Yeah. I mean, it's one of the things I remember, though. And it did ring true.
Yeah.
30-something years later.
Well, also some folks that we've had on too that start like Sergeant Killian, for example, said that just working in the jail made him a better cop to help him learn how to talk to people and deal with those situations. So that has to be part of it as well.
Oh, well, there's no doubt about that. Is that you learn how to take care of yourself, you learn how to talk to people, and frankly, especially back then, it's very different. It's called what it is. You learn how to protect yourself. You learn how to fight. Mm-hmm. You learn how to deal with people that don't like you and want to hurt you. Mm-hmm. And back then, you had no equipment. So, today, the detention deputies have all kinds of equipment. They have tasers. They have handcuffs. They have all kinds of stuff to use. Back then, literally, you had nothing. They wouldn't even let you back then.
You didn't have a stick?
No. And back then, this is the early 80s, the deputies in the jail is that you weren't even allowed to carry handcuffs.
Wow.
Sergeants carried handcuffs. Deputies couldn't carry them. And so the only thing you had was your hands. So let me show you how long ago it was back then. Is that they were in the process of changing it just after I started. So sergeants wore silver badges. Sergeants didn't even wear gold back then. And it was and they were called correctional officers, not deputies. Mm-hmm. They had a different patch and it was a different everything. But equipment was non-existent. I mean, there's no prostrate chairs. There's none of that stuff. Mm-hmm. There were single cells. And you had your mouth to de-escalate things, but they didn't call it de-escalation back then. You had your power of reasoning with people, and when all that didn't work, then you did what you had to do.
So
were you in some good fights?
Yeah.
Can you tell us about them?
Yeah.
Anything stands out?
I remember the first time getting all bloodied up, and we wore white shirts. And I remember there was a guy back in B Wing, and there's 3 cells back there. B Wing was the medical wing, and single isolation cells. Mm-hmm. And there was a notorious guy, I'm sure he's long passed by now, and a big guy, and he used to get arrested all the time. Uh-huh. And he'd be back there, and he's just totally uncooperative and would just sling feces at you and urine, and it was just a mess. He had all kinds of mental health issues. And he would never come out of his cell. And he said, you got to go in and get him. And
there's no CRT then, right?
No CRT. Yeah. No, it was, you had your hands, and that's it. And you go in, and I remember that one because I came out just really covered in blood, and it was a mess.
Was it yours?
Both. I mean, he was a big guy. He fought, but you learn how to, the point of it is you learn how to take care of yourself. Mm-hmm. So it is, and it's more of a controlled environment, certainly, than the street.
Right.
So you learn how to talk to people, you learn how to de-escalate, but when sometimes, in our world, in our business, you can't de-escalate, and sometimes just stuff happens. So you do learn how to take care of yourself. You learn how to reason with people and then deal with the situation as you have to deal with it. So, there was a lot back then. It was very different than it is today in that respect.
So was there anything growing up in the environment that you grew up in, was there anything that was like you were really surprised by getting your first law enforcement job per se? Was there anything that kind of caught you by surprise you weren't anticipating or expecting?
No, I can't think of anything. I think it's pretty much because up there, because I as a kid growing up, as a teenager, I worked and I did ride-alongs with the city cops. I mean, that's about all I did. So I would have been out there. I knew what was going on out there and kind of knew what to expect.
All right.
What was the allure for you? Like as a kid, wanting to be? Was it like getting bad guys? Was it helping people? Did you have was there a certain part of the job?
Usually there's a division in law enforcement. You either want to get the bad guys or
drive
Help
cool
the good
cars
guys.
or
It's usually one or the other.
Yeah, and it's a hard question to answer because I just kind of got hooked into it, and then it just kind of stayed.
Yeah.
I would say looking back, I mean, I still do today. I think have a sense of right and wrong, and I really can't stand wrong. I really hate it when people don't do the right thing and they do the wrong thing by others. So, some people will give you the stock answer, and it is a stock answer. I want to help others and all that stuff. And, 99.999% of everybody comes into an interview, gets asked the question, why you want to be a cop? I want to help others. Okay, but, what does that translate to, and what does that really mean? And I think for me, what it means is, I can't stand it when people don't treat other people right, and they take advantage of vulnerable people, and they do them wrong.
Yeah.
And I think that's what, probably, if there was something I had to say, that's probably a motivator.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So you're there for about a year, maybe not quite a year, because then you go to Dunedin PD. So was that a situation where they picked up that old pass application and called you, or what happened?
Oh, I mean, I was there for a year, and I said, I got to get out of jail. I got to get out of this place.
That's a common thought, yeah.
And, well, I never stopped, really. I mean, because, I went there, and it was great. It was. And there's a lot of great work being done.
But that was what it was, though. They were hiring. You get on the road.
Right.
Yeah.
And then once you get in there and you find out, well, yeah, but it's going to be a little bit down the road, and it's not so easy. And, and so I still had all my applications in everywhere, and I was still checking periodically. And so I kind of locked my sights in on Dunedin. And there was a guy who was a captain up there back then, and Bob Hayworth was the chief of police. He had come from St. Pete, and he was the chief, and a guy named Sam Rainey was a captain up there. And I knew some people at Dunedin, and I knew they had openings. So I literally went every single week and went to the front desk and asked to talk to Captain Rainey. And most of the time they say he's busy, he's not available. And because that's back in the day, I mean, there's no cell phones or email or anything. And so I just kept going and going and going. And then one day I remember I showed up at the front desk. And he came to the front desk, and he was a big guy, big, just overbearing guy, huge guy. And he came, and he was, had a good old Southern drawl to him, and he came to the front desk. And I remember he looked at me and he said, "Boy, what are you doing?" And I said, "Well, Captain, I want a job." And he said, "You certainly are tenacious." I said, "Yep, and I want a job." He said, "Well, come on back." So I went back in his office and sat down, and he offered me a job.
Wow.
So it was just one of those things where I just kept going back. I wasn't going to stop going back until I was just such a pain in the neck to him.
Yeah, you were the squeaky
and that's
wheel.
What happened.
So you know how many people are going to try that with you now? They're just going to be waiting out the lobby asking to talk to you for the next year.
Problem is, you come in the front door, though. It's like they'll get you. It's vulnerable.
That's true.
So why Dunedin? Was it just because you knew people there, and that was kind of you thought you had the best shot?
I knew people there, had a good reputation, and it's really a place I thought I could get hired. Like I said, I was trying the other, but they just weren't hiring. It was just, the opportunities weren't there. They didn't have the openings. The other one because they had openings, I knew I could, had a chance, was Gulfport. St. Pete, Clearwater, it's all about timing, and Dunedin had the openings. I knew people. And then the other people that were there were kind of talking to Sam Rainey as well, and kind of putting in a word for me. That's just how it all works. And so it was just an opportunity. But I mean, I just went every week, and finally
got it done.
And I think he had a couple other choice words that we won't use, but I remember him distinctly saying that, "Hey, you are tenacious." I said, yeah. And I want a job.
So your first day then, so I mean, I'm sure there's FTO just like there is now and everything for Dunedin, or was it, here's the car keys, don't get killed?
No, I mean, that's kind of how the jail was. The jail was, show up, you go through a small orientation, and basically there you go. Here's literally a set of keys, and, there are a bunch of people that don't like you, and go, corral them. Yeah, really, no, seriously. It's, pretty much what it was. But no, Dunedin wasn't that way. I mean, they're, professional, and I went to the police academy, and, people don't even probably know where it was. They called it PVTI back then, Pinellas Vocational Technical Institute. That's where the police academy is housed. Right there off of 58th Street in High Point.
Okay. So the P-Tech campus now.
Yeah, and a lot of people. So I went to the police academy, I guess now 40 years ago, 1983. And there were people in there from the sheriff's office, from Clearwater, Dunedin had a few. And so we went through the police academy.
So they hired you and paid you to go to the police academy?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So they actually paid you. That was the standard way back then.
Okay.
The sponsorship things weren't a big. Most everybody back then. I mean, Largo had people in it, Clearwater, Largo, St. Pete, Tarpon. But majority of them, I think in that whole class we had a pretty big academy class. I think in that only 2 people were sponsored. Meaning that they weren't being paid and they weren't hired. So no, you got hired by the agency, you got a paycheck. You went.
Makes sense.
Dunedin even paid for our lunches.
Wow. While you're in the academy or always?
No, while you're in the academy.
Damn.
We used to go to the old Morrison's cafeteria at East Bay and 19 and have lunch on the city every day.
Nice. So the first day getting out there on your own, then that had to be gratifying, all that tenacity. And what was that like?
Yeah, so I got out and went to the FTO program, and some people who have been around here for a while may know him because he was here when we took over Dunedin. Dave Littlejohn, who was a deputy here, was my FTO when I got out. And so I was with him for a while and then got released from the FTO program. And I don't know about, you can use the term hit the streets in Dunedin, but I was out there in Dunedin and I spent about a year there.
So what kind of, you remember any memorable first calls or
Yeah, one in particular, this actually came back probably about 6 months ago now. It's kind of interesting. So I was working midnights, and I was at County Road 1, which is also Keene, and 580. And there was a car in front of me. It was a Toyota, tan Toyota, and it blew the light going eastbound. And I went to stop it. We had these big Chevy, Caprices or whatever they were. So I went to stop it. I flipped on the lights. There were no lights. They didn't go on. The whole thing shorted out. No siren, no lights, no anything. But, because I was young and whatever and they ran and, how dare you run. So
from the law.
Exactly.
I am law.
So I remember chasing them, and I chased them northbound on County Road 1. They went into the Amberley subdivision and driving really fast and reckless. They were trying to get away. So I was chasing them, and for all the deputies out there that are listening, don't do this.
Different times.
So, but it was 40 years ago. It's a different time, different policies, different way of doing things, and so I chased them with no lights, and I chased them into Amberley subdivision, and they wrecked into a house, and there were 3 guys in the car. One of them was in the back seat, 2 in the front. They bailed out. And I tried to chase down one of them. He got away, went back to the guy in the back seat. Well, anyway, there was a ton of blood inside the car. The car was just covered with blood inside. And it wasn't from the wreck. And so what it turned out, that those guys, there was an old bar in Countryside Village Square, which is at Countryside at 19, called Penrod's. They had just done an armed robbery there and jacked some people in the parking lot. But the car was stolen, and they had murdered the owner of the car. And out in Oldsmar, off of Gimgong Road, which is off of Tampa Road, it's still there, is they picked him up over in Tampa, brought him there, got a physical altercation with him, and they ran over him in his own car. And that's where all the blood came. And then they had put him in the car and back and forth and ran over him. So we ended up getting the other 2 guys. It was investigated by Clearwater and then the sheriff's office homicide people. So that was like this big, huge thing. And so one of the guys, like 6 months ago, he's in Florida State Prison today, still in prison. He got a life sentence. Is that in one of our cold case homicides, that guy surfaced as a suspect. And they're still looking at him, but I think at this point it's probably not. So they brought this name to me like 6 months ago and said, working this cold case, blah, blah, blah. And, here's the possible suspect in it. And I'm like, wow, that's
full circle.
Full circle.
Yeah, we've got that note here actually because
we did
Tom
our
was
research.
telling us about it.
Who was?
Tom
Land.
Yeah, in cold case. So,
corporal.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Yep. So that was it was kind of interesting. Sleepy Dunedin, but it shows anything can happen anywhere, anytime. And
what other kind of things are going on in Dunedin crime-wise at that time? there's
Normal
always
stuff, nothing. I mean,
Yeah,
it's,
nothing crazy.
the bars downtown, traffic, usual stuff. The other thing that sticks out back then was, and most people, if you know North County, you're familiar with Bayshore Boulevard. Well, Dunedin, their main cruiser back then was these Ford Fairmonts. And if you've been around, you remember Ford Fairmonts, and they were, you could not, I'm serious, you could not do a U-turn on Bayshore Boulevard in Dunedin in one of those Ford Fairmonts. You couldn't turn it around. The thing was but that's what primarily their fleet was. And then the big deal was, and everybody, is that Dunedin only had red lights on their cruisers. They didn't have blue lights. And for whatever reason. And then finally they got one cruiser that had red and blue. So everybody scrambled to get the car that had the red and the blue because everybody wanted to, drive the car with the blue lights because there's no take-home cars back then.
So
The race to get to that car.
Big time. You fight for it.
they're on 8-hour shifts then?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, we had days, evenings, and mids. Yeah, 8-hour shifts. Yeah.
So what brings you to the sheriff's office then?
Get out of Dunedin.
It was too sleepy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And some of the guys, and I remember there was a couple of people I left with at the same time. And, back then is that, and they still don't, I don't think have any, is you could get close, but city of Dunedin has no part of the city is on US 19. So, you want to get out there on US 19 and work traffic and do all the things that US 19 brings. So you could sit there and stare at US 19, but you couldn't go out on US 19.
Just out of reach.
So it's like, we got to get out of here.
So did someone approach you or you applied on your own? Or?
There were a couple other guys there, and we kind of all decided at the same time we were going to,
Abandoned Dunedin.
make a mass exit. And,
But you got it back at the end.
Now at that point, the sheriff's office was like really hiring, like actively hiring. And especially certified people that had some experience. So at that point, there was aggressive hiring going on here. And so it was pretty easy. And the three of us basically left at the same time. They weren't real happy in Dunedin about it, but it's whatever.
So obviously today we have a really good working relationship with all the other municipal agencies. Was that always the case? How was the sheriff's office perceived among municipal agencies back then? About the same? Rivalry?
Well, I think it's varied over time. It depends upon, who's leading the organizations, who the sheriff is and who the police chiefs are. And I'd say over time, the level of collaboration and cooperation and partnerships is that, like so many things, that it's varied. It's waxed and it's waned. And it truly has been up and down over time.
So you get sheriff's office. What kind of equipment are patrol deputies carrying? We got revolvers. What's going on?
Yeah. So when I came, we had, in fact, we've got it now. One of the older cars that we have that we towed around, which is a Dodge Diplomat. And those things were great cars. They screamed. They were fast. We had Plymouth Grand Furies and Dodge Diplomats, and so those were the cruisers. Set up the way you see that one that's out there now. It's I probably drove that one at one point, but. And yeah, 38s. We had 3-inch gun belts back then, so the buckles were huge, and everybody complained about them. They're all so big, but and you didn't really equipment-wise. You had a flashlight, you had a gun, you had a nightstick, and a shotgun.
And not a collapsible nightstick either. So
No. You
didn't carry that on your belt, or did you?
No, you do. But it wasn't collapsible. It is that you had an O-ring on there. It sat in there. And
it looked pretty funny running with it.
Some people. Not really. No.
Slapping you while you're running.
Some people carry the big black ones, and some had the traditional old wood ones. It just varied.
And the flashlights are the big D-cell ones. The big giant.
Some did, yeah. Some did, yeah. They were, some stories about those things, but
ones that are acceptable for the public.
But
what kind of stories? Flashlight stories.
They're projectile weapons, right?
But they're big though, and then we went to what was then considered to be this state of the art, cutting edge, new technology, and it was a flashlight called the Source. And the Source was a rechargeable flashlight. Weren't the big Kellites, as they were called back then, the big, which are basically just metal tubes with batteries in them. And so we went to the Source, and the Source had 2 prongs on the end that kind of like what happens today with a drive stone with a taser. And it was the big, you push a button and an arc would have, and it would shock somebody.
Oh, really?
So you had on one end
of the flashlight, you had
the stinger part of it, and then the other end was the flashlight part of it. The problem with the ones, they didn't hold a charge real well, the light, so they were around for a few years. So the equipment was gun, shotgun, flashlight, nightstick. That's about it. Didn't really have anything else.
So then, how long were you in patrol for?
A few years.
Okay, and then ended up in narcotics. So while you're out of patrol, though, first of all, did you see a noticeable difference? Obviously, where you're working is a huge difference, but as far as equipment, support, all that stuff, working at the sheriff's office versus with the city?
Back then, it was basically the same. There really wasn't a lot of difference because I don't know that there's a lot of available equipment to have so many different, so many differences. One of the things the sheriff's office always had, which was the computers in the cars. None of the cities had any computers in the cars, but back then, they were dumb terminals. They called
basically like an Etch-a-Sketch, wasn't it?
I don't know, it was that bad, but it was. But they didn't work half the time, and they were transmitted because there was no cellular, so they transmitted over RF. So you had your police radio, and then you had another radio, and the thing would just gurgle all night long because it's all the data that's going over it. And they had these two big whip antennas on the back of the car, and the thing wouldn't work half the time. So you sit there and you like beat it trying to get it to work.
Did that work?
I don't know, but it made you feel better.
I get that.
So
Yeah, we do that in our office too.
So you just smack it a few times, and then it transmits, and you're like, oh, okay, it made me feel better.
Yeah.
So that's one of the things to share. But about differences, that's about it. Really, is the computer and the radios. It wasn't digital like it is now. It's all analog. It's all different. I remember working midnights, and every single night the transmission, because you'd hear Cross City Police Department up in Central North Florida.
North Florida.
Cross City, and I still remember it. I guess I got PTSD over that. But anyway, it was everything's pretty similar. And when I first started, I ended up first shift. I came from Dunedin, got out of the FTO program, and for the first two shifts, I ended up in South Pasadena. It was like
all the excitement in the world.
Well, I made it exciting.
Yeah.
Because
You can always find stuff.
you got all those drunks coming over from St. Pete Beach. So I put a lot of people in jail out of South Pasadena. I mean, they weren't residents, or people passing through.
Right.
Yeah.
Welcome to South Pasadena.
Yeah. There was a bar. It's still there. That bar at 75th and Blythe Pass. It was called the Hurricane back then, and a lot of drugs, a lot of stuff in there. I remember one night, and I took 4 DUIs in one night.
Oh.
Yeah.
And that was you driving them all the way to the jail?
Yeah, and
But
going
it's
back.
fast. But but it was yes. but I was a breath test operator. You did your own back then. So, so I just
Did the whole thing.
you do the FST, put them in the car, drive to the jail, do the breath test, quick, fast, get the paperwork, go back down, boom, did another. So I did 4 in one night.
Dang.
Wow.
So what other types, so did you like working DUI investigations?
Yeah.
Yeah. Any other types of calls you enjoyed?
Yeah. Well, anything that's in progress and action calls, So then I got out of South Pasadena and worked in Wellman, worked in Seminole, worked a little bit over in Baskins, worked different areas, and then went North County. So I was working up in the north end for a while. And actually, when I left patrol, I went to burglary. So I was a CID burglary detective.
Why'd you do that?
Because it was an opportunity to advance. They had openings. When I went to North End, I did a lot of investigations, and I guess they liked the work. And the captain up there said, we have an opening. Are you interested? I said, sure. So I went to burglary.
I feel like that's still kind of, the way the deputies advance or try to get their foot in the door somewhere is if they're out on patrol, they're working that certain type of call. That's a good way to kind of get the attention of whoever you need to.
Yeah, I think that's right. And people need to know is that you need to be your own best champion sometimes. And you can do that by how you write reports, what you put in the reports, the investigative work you do. And if you do some really significant investigative work, just document it in the report. Let everybody read it. You should get credit for the work you did. And I used to do that back then, quite a bit. I'd, take on some of these investigations and write these mammoth reports and just to document it all.
And you went from burglary to narcotics?
Well, it's a long story. It's not that simple. I was working burglary stuff and got involved in this case where it was really a ring that was involved in narcotics. So it became a really complex case with a whole lot of tentacles to it. And these people were out of Polk County and out of Clearwater Beach, and they were all over the place. So this burglary case kind of turned to a dope case. And I started working the dope aspect of it, and
liked it.
That's just kind of, and so I was still assigned to burglary, but then the dope people, because they were known to the FBI and known to our narcotics people at the time, and I started working with them, and then I kind of got TDY'd over there. So it just kind of morphed. It was never anything where I said, I want to go work drugs. It just kind of happened because of that case. And that turned into like 6 months, which turned into 8 months, and turned into a year. And finally, the supervisors in the burglary unit said, excuse me, either stay over there or come back because somebody needs to work your area. So I ended up staying over there.
Before we get into that, there was another cold case deal, wasn't there, from when he was in patrol?
Yes. This one here.
That one, yeah.
Yep.
So there was Shirley Badger Trenner was another case that you encountered that popped up. So you're popping up in cold cases. So this was it was a murder, I think.
Yeah.
So then they developed a suspect, and then you ended up getting the guy on a warrant. You remember that at all?
Yeah. Not offhand, I don't. I mean, I made a fair amount of arrests and pretty active out there. So
It's just fun to see your name pop up in things.
Deputy
Gualtieri.
Yeah. I mean, back then, just kept busy. You just kept doing your thing.
All right. So narcotics.
Yeah.
You had a knack for it. That's how you end up there. Kind of accidentally, maybe kind of fall into it. But once you kind of got in there, starting off, did you get out there and start buying drugs? Is that what everybody kind of does?
No, not for me, not back then. I mean, I did later on, but not at first because I was working this specific case. And then this specific case turned into a wiretap case, and it turned into a long-term case, and actually went on for a pretty significant period of time where we were able to show several guys that were here locally who were getting kilos of cocaine from sources in Miami. And again, this is into the late 80s, early 90s, crack was becoming prevalent. There was a lot of coke, a lot of crack on the street, a lot of stuff coming out of South Florida. And it turned into more of these long-term wiretap investigations. And so I was working closely with DEA people. A lot of the cases got prosecuted federally through the U.S. Attorney's Office and federal court, not the state court, not through the state attorney's office. So I, kind of got into those cases early on. And then I went there's an opening on the DEA has task force. And I spent 4 years in Tampa working out of the DEA office on the DEA task force. So I did that and a lot of international stuff, money laundering cases, really all over the country. And it seemed like just every case ended up being a wiretap case. And then came back out of the task force and then went back to more traditional, narcotics
You just
cases.
get tired of that, or sorry, Laura?
I was going to say, is that when you grow the facial hair and the long hair and are undercover?
You don't have to do that.
Yeah.
That's a real myth. If you got money, people will sell you dope. And so, I went out there and made some drug buys.
Do you remember your first buy?
Yeah, from a guy down in St. Pete. It was for 8 ball of cocaine. And, that's just acting. I mean, that's not, and then we did a lot of street level enforcement. There were a lot of problems in St. Pete. And they used to call it the green team. And, we wore green and St. Pete wore green then. They wear blue now. We used to go down there and they had their green team. We go down there and help them. And it was a lot of just chasing people on the street because drugs and open air drug markets were so prevalent back then.
Yeah.
So it was a lot of street level stuff. I did, and people need to make buys. I did it. I didn't do a lot of it because then I went back to working some of these cases again. And it's kind of the narcotics. But I spent total probably about 10 years in narcotics.
Oh, wow.
Long time.
Yeah.
Long time. Yeah.
Any other big stories, fun cases from back then?
Oh, there were a lot. I mean, I remember going out to Los Angeles and we had a guy who was part of a case and he had like 5 kilos of coke and we were setting up a deal. And if you ever come out of LAX, it's still there. there's a Carl's Jr. on Century Boulevard, and I remember going out there and sitting there all day long for this guy to show up to this dope deal, and we took him off in the parking lot of Carl's Jr. right by LAX, and every time I'm out there now and I drive by, I'm like, I remember that.
So what kind of case would take deputies out of state? I mean, that far of something. I mean, how does that work?
Well, it depends on the case, and what you're trying to do is that, dope world is really pretty simple. It's all supply and demand. It's just like any other business. You got low-level people that sell low-level amounts all the way up to the sources, and it's just like any other company, any other business. And so if you're working it up, then you're working it up into the sources. And sometimes those sources are in various places from, it doesn't matter, come out. Normally back then, most of the dope was coming out of Miami. Some of it would come out of California. Some of it would come out of Texas. Some of it would come out of Arizona, usually coming up through the south and the west to the east. But then again, it was that I remember one case, and it was very significant. And it was a heroin case. And back then, we seized a kilogram of heroin. And it came in, we did a search warrant over in Tampa, and the guy had a kilo of heroin, but it had been imported. And it came from Southeast Asia, and it was sewn into the lining of ankle, length, leather boots. And that turned out to be part of this big heroin importation case involving an Asian crime group out of New York. And dope was coming in Seattle, and it was all in ice buckets. And in between the insulation and the stainless and the ice buckets and all kinds of heroin. That case, we tried that case over in Tampa in federal court. And in the federal court system, the U.S. Attorney's Office, they don't have investigators. So when you do those cases, you end up working with the prosecutors for on the cases all the way through. You actually, if you're the case agent, you sit in the courtroom during trial. So you're there. And in that case, that trial lasted about 2 months.
Wow.
Dang.
And we convicted a whole bunch of people out of that. So there was a lot. Over 10 years. I did a lot of cases and put a lot of people away. There's one guy I tracked is that he got 35 years.
Dang.
And periodically over the years, I'd check and I guess
Still there.
Still there. Yeah.
So what after narcotics? Back on the road?
So, I think the sheriff's office at that point was in a different situation. There wasn't a lot of room for movement.
So we're talking about mid-90s?
Yeah, mid-90s.
Okay.
Wasn't a lot of room for movement. There hadn't been promotions in years. There was literally, and there just wasn't much opportunity. And I was kind of at a point where, stay or go. Mm-hmm. And because of all that drug experience, I had a lot of friends at the U.S. Attorney's Office and had been sitting through all those trials and, quite frankly, looked at some of those people in the courtroom and some of those lawyers and said, yeah, I can do that. That's not all that, So I decided to leave and go to law school. And it was at a point where it's either stay or go, because once you reach that kind of point, if you stay too much longer, then there's no sense in going because of retirement and stuff. So I decided to leave, go to law school. I really had no intention of coming back. But I didn't retire. I just left and went to law school.
Kept your certification?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yep. I didn't change anything. I just left, went to law school, and then just came back then I went to law school and I went to work for a firm in Tampa doing employment defense work. And it so happened, it was just a coincidence. It wasn't intentional. It was a lot of federal court stuff, civil litigation and employment defense work. But that firm represented Pinellas County in employment stuff. Mm-hmm. And Sheriff Coates was in office at that point. He took office in 2003 after Sheriff Rice left to go to the legislature. And I had worked with him over time. He, as a lieutenant, I think, as a captain, as a major, he was, and so we knew each other. And he was a big narcotics guy. Sheriff Coates worked narcotics for a long, long time. And so, but he was a sheriff at the time, and they had some employment cases. So, I knew him, but we kind of rekindled things, I guess you'd say, because of the contact at that point. Mm-hmm. And so the general counsel for the sheriff's office retired, so he called me. We met for lunch, and next thing you know, here I am. So I was back as the general counsel.
So when you left, though, to go to law school, you kept your certification and everything. Did you have any inkling at that point you were going to come back, or just
no? But I was
invested a lot in the career and want to keep it up.
Yeah, I mean, you learn in life is you don't close doors, and so you keep all your options open. That's one of the reasons. Like, now from a purely personal perspective, is how it works is if you leave here and you retire under the Florida retirement system, and I was eligible to retire. I was vested. I had my time in. I had my years in. So if I had retired and said, okay, I'm going to retire under FRS, I'm not going to just resign, I'm going to retire, is that I can never go back in the retirement system. So that change back then would have been all it was. But now I left it sitting. I didn't close that door. I didn't close the door on anything. So when I came back, and I came back in, I don't know where it was, 2005, 2006, 2006, I guess it was. Yeah, 2006. When I came back, I just picked right up where I left off, with all of this. Everything's still in place. So you just learn, you never know what the future holds, and don't close your doors and just leave all your options open.
Right. Which is solid advice, I think. So general counsel, which I don't want to talk about too much because we don't want people to be listening to this to help them go to sleep.
Yeah.
But what is the role of general counsel at the sheriff's office?
Well, I mean, big picture and really quickly, it's everything under the sun that you can imagine in the practice of law. It truly is a general counsel's office. I mean, think about it. Even, today we got 1,500 cars, which means we got car wrecks all over the place. We got a jail with inmates, and you get all kinds of inmate lawsuits for a variety of things. You got cops on the street. You get excessive force claims. You got slip and falls. You've got all kinds of enforcement-related things that are coming out of the civil system from bake wrecks and evictions and levies and a process. So it's a big job. So it really is.
But as general counsel, then, so you had associate counsels then. We still have associate counsels today, obviously. But what does that look like? So things just get run by you, like. I know there are assigned cases, but like, what's the general flow of work?
Well, we're today we do all our litigation in-house. I mean, so it's really a law firm. I think we have 6 lawyers and several paralegals and legal assistants and do everything. The only thing we farm out is stuff that we can't handle because of volume or because of conflicts. So it really is running a law firm is what it is. There's a big, huge general practice of law. Trying cases to transaction work contracts. I mean, we probably have close to 1,000 different contracts, and all those contracts have to be reviewed. And sometimes, like anything in a business, sometimes there's disagreements. There's business disagreements. You can end up in litigation over the contracts. It's a lot of stuff. A lot of stuff at a wide variety of things.
So, really quick, just jump back. When Sheriff Coates asked you to come back, was there any hesitation?
No, because once it's in your blood, it's in your blood.
I mean, this is a perfect marrying up of interests and
and it was like, there was no question. I had no.
So you actively missed it while you were being a lawyer. Did you think about it all the time? Did you see the cop cars go by and get all excited when you heard the sirens? Because I still do that.
I don't know. I had fun doing what I was doing.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't say that it was like, because I wasn't seeking it out. He called me and the opportunity was there. And once the opportunity was there, it was 100% yes. But no, I wasn't looking for it. Okay. I really wasn't. It was, thinking about more at that point because I've been there for a period of time. I was thinking more about whether I was going to stay there or go to another firm or open my own practice or what I was going to do. So I was probably more engaged in that thought process than anything else.
Was there anything that was tough for the transition coming back as general counsel? Was there anything that really was a roadblock, or you just were rocking and rolling from day one?
Yeah, I don't know. No, it was pretty easy. Yeah. So
you're general counsel for a couple of years, and then the chief deputy thing comes up. How did that happen?
Yeah, so the guy who was the chief deputy at the time retired, and Sheriff Coates asked me to take on that responsibility. So I had the dual role of general counsel and chief deputy. And no, I didn't get 2 paychecks, which would have been nice. Two jobs, but and it was a lot. Unfortunately, it was a defining moment for us as an agency, and probably one of the biggest issues that we've ever faced, and that was in 2008, the beginning of the economic downturn. And the very first year, we had to cut $50 million from our budget back then, eliminate a whole lot of positions, and it was just a terrible time. So it was, walking into that and having to navigate that. The chief deputy is in charge of all the operations, is really put it in terms people would understand, the chief operating officer, if you will. And having to navigate through all of that it was a challenge.
At what point through all that did you ever think about being sheriff? I mean, because once you make it to number 2, there's only one more step. So did you ever think about it?
Probably, but not actively. I was more focused on just doing the job. I enjoyed doing what I was doing. It was good, especially when I became the chief deputy, be able to put a uniform back on, get out there, do it. I mean, that's the fun part to me. And I still try and get out there when I can, but I did over a period of time. And but no, and until it really presented itself. And when Sheriff Coates announced that he was going to retire and his wife had cancer, and that was that situation. So. But I wouldn't say it's anything. It never anything I pursued. Now, I'm now, as I mean, it's long. I've been in my 13th year. Between being the chief deputy and the sheriff, it's over 15 years now. So I mean, it's I really don't think about it.
So how does that go down? So Sheriff Coates makes a decision to retire early because his wife was having some health issues, and then you're appointed. The governor call you?
Yeah.
How'd that go?
Yeah, I mean, it's a quick call. You have to apply. So they take applications, and several people applied when he announced he wasn't going to. So you go through a process. There's a interview and a selection process, and it's the governor. He's busy. It's it's a quick call. It's professional. It's cordial, and you say thank you, and there you go.
And then you're just like, yep, okay, no big deal, ready to go.
Right.
Wow. You had no oh wow, this is cool. Nothing.
There's work to do.
Work to do.
Switch offices and keep going.
So really quick, I just want to jump back to Chief Deputy land for a minute, because you definitely had a knack for, and I think you still have a knack for solving problems that really probably aren't your problem, but you don't want to deal with it, and it's the right thing to do. So one of the big things with your chief deputy, I think, that really got you around the community was Pinellas Safe Harbor. So we had a big issue with homelessness in different areas of the county. Right. Talk about how that kind of materialized, because I think that's really kind of a cornerstone of how you've kind of managed and done some of the things that we've gotten done, is just saying, hey, somebody's got to do it. We're dealing with it already, so let's just do it right. Yeah, well, I'm a big believer the rubber needs to hit the road. You just get it done, stop talking about it, and just do something about it. And if you're just going to keep talking about it, then stop talking about it, because nothing's going to get accomplished. So back then we had a big problem with the jail. Again, we had budget issues that were still looming back then. In 2010, we had overcrowding. The jail population was projected to be about 3,800 people. We were at about, at that point, I think we had about 3,600 with about 400 on the floor. It was not sustainable the way it was. It was a mess out there. It was an operational mess, and it was a safety issue for the deputies and for everybody. You just can't have that many people on the floor. And we started looking at the population and seeing what's causing this, and the majority of it was people that were in there on social crime, and the majority of it was pretrial misdemeanors, some sentence misdemeanors, and it was all social crime. It was disorderly conduct for urinating in public. It was trespass. It was all those minor things that were a lot of those people. And the problem is the cops were doing what cops do to solve a problem, and removing the person from the situation. When somebody's on Central Avenue in St. Pete in front of a restaurant, they're urinating on the window when people are trying to eat dinner, what's the cop going to do? But they had no place to take them. So they had no choice. There's no services. There's no place. So we started having a bunch of meetings, the chief judge, state attorney, public defender, mayors in Clearwater and St. Pete and all over the place. And we had meetings. And we had meetings. And we kept having meetings, and nothing was getting solved. And so because of the economic downturn, that what is now Safe Harbor used to be a bus depot for PSTA, years and years and years ago. And then it got turned into a jail facility. It was a direct supervision housing unit, so it was part of the jail itself. It was actually part of the jail. But we closed it because we didn't have the staff and laying people off, which also led to the overcrowding issues in the jail because of everything that was closed. So I was looking at it and said, there's a better way. All these people are just talking. You had people storming out of meetings. Everybody's mad at each other. It's just nothing was getting done. And again,
traction, you need traction, rubber has to hit the road, just get it done, figure it out, solve it and figure it out. So we got this facility. We got too many people in the jail, and we're criminalizing homelessness. And why don't we open a facility that's a diversion from the jail and get these people services and try and get them help and try and break that cycle of homelessness. And at the same time, we can reduce the crowding in the jail and be more cost effective. Because so back then, today it's about $155 a day to house somebody in the county jail. Back then it was probably about $110, $115 a day. And so we opened Safe Harbor. We were housing people there, and we were housing them there for, I think then originally it was about $13 a day. Wow. And plus we're getting them services. And so we opened it in early 2010, I believe it was. We opened it, and naively I thought that the population would kind of gradually increase there. Well, we went from 0 to like 400, but it had the desired effect because the jail population significantly decreased, and we were keeping people out. And so it pretty much, up until COVID, it pretty much stayed at about 400, in that 400 range. Sometimes we were 425, sometimes 375, but pretty much in that 400 range for many years up until 2020. So that's kind of the history of Safe Harbor.
Yeah, it was a significant thing. It really got your name out there. A lot of people were familiar with you at the different municipal levels because of all that.
Well, some people didn't like it at first, and people aren't used to, let's solve the problem and get it done. And people were like, no, you can't do that. And I said, yeah, I can, watch. And, we did. And, I remember people back then, there was the Homeless Leadership Alliance, and you had all these different leadership, homeless leadership organizations. You can't do it that way. You got to go through us. You got to do. No, you all have had plenty of opportunity to talk about it.
I'm not going to kick the can down the road.
No, we're going to get it done. And now, and it is significant, is that the Pinellas County Sheriff's Office is the largest provider of homeless services in Pinellas County. So, think about that. Is that as a law enforcement organization, we're the largest provider of homeless services. I don't know of any other law enforcement organization in the country that has that role. Others are involved in things. So it's really unique. I've offered over time, many times, people can and should ask the question, what are you doing that for? Why are you doing it? Well, one, it's the right thing to do by people. Two is that it helps to manage the jail. It is a jail diversion program, and it manages the crowding, and it's the fiscally right thing to do, because what will we do with all those people in the jail, and how could we afford it? And when you look at, like today, it's about $25 a day at Safe Harbor or $155 a day at the jail. So, it's a no-brainer as to, that it's cost effective. But as I say to all these social service organizations, if anybody wants to come run Safe Harbor, I'll turn it over to you. But we're
takers.
13 years into it now, and nobody said, oh, yeah, we'll take it on. So
right.
We just keep doing it.
All right. So back to sheriffing now. So there are people don't, and that was the only time we're going to go off and talk about cool policy stuff, because we're going to have to bring it back another time to do that. There's just so much stuff. But as far as the Office of Sheriff in Florida, it is pretty different. People come, you mentioned obviously in New York, not a premier agency, different part, Michigan, places like that. But, Florida, Texas, and California kind of have this where sheriffs are usually the premier agencies. They have a lot of power. Talk about that a little bit, the differences.
Well, in Florida, the sheriffs are truly independent constitutional officers. People sometimes think that the sheriff's office is part of county government. It's not. Don't work for the county commission, don't work for the county administrator, truly independent, and work directly for the people. And that's the way that the crafters of the Florida Constitution created it. And I think it works extremely well here in Florida. So around the country, there are some states that don't even have sheriffs, like Hawaii doesn't have sheriffs, Delaware doesn't have sheriffs, there's a few that don't. The majority do to some degree, but they do different things. In some places, the sheriffs do nothing other than operate the jail. In some places, they do the jail and court. Some places, they do the courts. Some places, they do a little bit as it relates to some form of policing. But to be the predominant, largest police organization, that is something that's unique with Florida sheriffs. And I don't know of a county in Florida where the sheriff isn't the largest police provider in that county.
And just for our listeners, unincorporated areas of the county and any contract cities, the contract is who the sheriff is responsible for. And I know that varies wildly.
Right.
County,
and,
but.
you hear me say this to people, but our jurisdiction is through the whole county, but our primary service area is the unincorporated area and the contract cities. But we police everywhere. I mean, make no mistake about it, is that, every city in the county is in the county. So, I'm responsible to all the voters and all the citizens, whether they're in a city or not. And so we have a role throughout the entire county.
So any learning curve for you as sheriff? I mean, you get started. I've heard you say before, the best part about the job is you get to make all the decisions, and it's also the worst part of the job.
It is.
What are some of the things? Well, I guess first, like, what's your day-to-day look like? What are routine sheriff things week to week? You're a tough person to ask because you're involved in all kinds of other stuff. But when it comes down to the core sheriff stuff, I mean, are there standing meetings you have every week operationally? Like, talk about what some of that is.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot, and it's very diverse. My day starts 7 in the morning and usually ends somewhere 8 o'clock at night, somewhere in there, is a normal day. And then if it's busier, there's stuff going on, then it's more than that. But yeah, I mean, we do standard meetings. You have, the direct reports, and have standard operational meetings, and I'll look at it, everything with internal affairs, employee issues, human resource issues, fiscal issues, the stuff that comes out of public relations, meet with all the bureau commanders. I mean, there's a lot of stuff operationally. I'm very involved operationally. I'm responsible for it, so I'm going to be involved in it.
So your operations meeting, all the majors or bureau commanders just literally go around and talk about what's happening? Yeah,
we just update and talk about what's going on in their areas of responsibility, if there's stuff that I need to make decisions on, that they need some guidance on, or if some of it is just making me aware of what's happening. I mean, I want to stay abreast of what's going on, and as long as I'm responsible for it, then I'm going to be responsible for it. And it doesn't mean that I don't. There's a difference between asking and telling. I tell people that all the time. Is that I want you to do a lot of telling what you're doing and do very little asking. Just tell me what you're doing, and if there's a concern, we'll talk about it. If you have a question because you don't know how to handle it, or it's nothing you've experienced before, then I'll help you with it, and you can ask, and we'll work through it together. But I need to know, what's going on, what's happening, and stay abreast of it all.
What are some of your least favorite things about your job? I mean, people are like, everything that must come across his desk must be terrible. I know that's not the case, but there is some not great things.
Well, there's something to be said for it. And the reason why there is something to be said for it is that if it was easy, or it was generally good, or it could be solved at a lower level, it would have been solved at a lower level, is that the majority of stuff that hits me is a problem. And normally most people would say it's not good, but that's why it hits me. And so you got to keep that in perspective, and you can't be jaded by it. We have a lot of great things going on. A lot of good people do a lot of good work, and that is the minority of stuff. But that's why it gets to you is because now I reach out and I get outside that bubble, so I see a lot of the good and am involved in the good. But the stuff that people bring to you is the stuff that hasn't been able to be resolved at a lower level. Probably one of the worst things that you deal with, and I hate dealing with it, but I will deal with it. And I think I've established for everybody what I'll tolerate and won't, and what I expect, is dealing with personnel issues. We have almost 3,000 employees, so you're going to have a wide range of things, a mix of what people do. And my message to people, I'm very serious about it, is just give us your best. Just try hard. The world's not perfect. I'm not perfect. You're not perfect. But what I care about is that people are working from the heart. And I could care less about hustle mistakes. And when people make hustle mistakes because they're trying to do the right thing, is that we're going to view that very differently than when people do things that are against policy or against the law, or not
dishonest.
What they should be doing. Yeah, well, I have no tolerance for that.
Yeah.
Or lying, or people that just that don't care and don't have that, quote, give a damn, where they just are apathetic to things. So if it's a intentional disregard, I view that very differently, and will treat it very differently than somebody who's trying. I mean, and we've had in the past, as an example, And I'm talking about past cases or stuff that's pending now. It happens, like with pursuits. We changed the pursuit policy, many years ago. We tightened it up pretty significantly. But if you go look at the discipline that we've rendered in internal affairs cases when people violated the discipline or the pursuit policy, the discipline is minor. It's minimal because people are trying to do the right thing. They're trying to get the bad guy. They're trying to protect the community. They're trying to, and as long as they're trying and it's a hustle mistake and they learn from it, I don't, nobody's going to get dinged hard. Now, I remember one we had several years ago. The person doesn't work here anymore, and they were investigating a retail theft. So a misdemeanor pettit theft, as it's called, from Kohl's down there at Park Street. And the person came out, and it was like a, $20 item. They got in a car, and they're racing, and they flee, and they're just going super fast up Park Street. And it chased them over this $20 thing from Kohl's down there. And it was a mess. And he got asked, well, it's a retail theft. It's a misdemeanor. Doesn't in any way, shape, or form get anywhere near the criteria for a full-blown pursuit. Why'd you chase him? And he said, well, why not? He said, well, have you ever read the policy? And the guy said, well, I've never read the policy. I don't know what it is.
Oh, wow.
That didn't work out real well for him.
Goodbye.
Imagine that.
So that's, those are the kinds of things. But when people are, again, they get caught up in the moment, the adrenaline's full, and they're trying to do the right thing.
And get legitimately bad people off the street.
Yeah. I mean, so, stuff happens. I'm not worried about that stuff.
Mm-hmm. So you talk about, as long as I'm responsible for it, you have a real strong sense of responsibility to the public. And you mentioned internal affairs stuff. I mean, when it comes to transparency, that's something that is big on. And I know I personally enjoy it in PR. I think everybody else does too, because then when you have trolls on social media saying we're trying to hide things or this and that, it's like, well, who else puts all their closed internal affairs cases on the internet for reading? It's very entertaining reading sometimes. But what's
people do some silly things sometimes.
Yeah, and we don't tolerate it. That's what's
right.
yeah.
But what's the deal behind that? I mean, what is it? Just that it's that public responsibility that you have?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I'm a big believer in transparency and that you live in a fishbowl and that people have an absolute right to know everything we do and what we do, why we do it, how we do it. Of course, I'm not talking about compromising investigations, of course, but that's a whole other topic. But as far as the conduct of the agency and what we do, look, we're here too, and it sounds like a cliche, but it's a true one if it is that we're here to serve the public. We're here to make sure the community stays safe. And people own this organization. I don't own it. The people own it, and they have a right to know what's going on. And I'm a big believer, you just fly it into the headwind. What are you worried about? Is that tell people what it is. If we messed up, we say we messed up, we fix it, and we move on. Because at least the stuff that I'm talking about is that if we mess up, it's because it is a hustle mistake. It's because we're trying to do the right thing. And when we don't, and it doesn't go the right way, we'll let everybody see what it is, and we take care of business. I set a tone early on to, what I was going to tolerate and what I wasn't, and had to kind of change a culture to a degree because there were some envelopes being pushed early on, and I had to let everybody know that wasn't going to happen. And I don't have a tolerance for laziness. I don't have a tolerance for people being bullies. I don't have a tolerance for people not doing the job. And that doesn't mean that everybody's perfect. I mean, you come to work every day, and every day is not a great day. I mean, that's just, at the end of the day, when it all balances out, is you're giving us your best effort. That's all we're asking for. And, some days you come to work, it's like, ugh, I don't feel like doing anything. Other days you're charging at 150 miles an hour. That's just life. But it's at the end of the day, we need to be accessible and let people see exactly what we're doing and not worry about it. And sometimes, it drives you guys nuts because because I put it too much out there. And people say, why are you doing that? Because it's the right thing to do. And people say, oh, well, others don't do that. Well, I don't care what others do.
Right.
You know?
What was kind of that, there had to be like the first moment where you were like, okay, like this is what I signed up for when it came to some sort of a mishap or a messaging thing. What was that for you? Was there anything particular like, okay, this is, we got to get out in front of this. I'm concerned about it. And was there anything like that? Or were you just kind of numb to it?
I think we had, early on, when I first took office back in 2011, and shortly after that, we had a couple of rough spots. We had some rough spots out in Narcotics where people were not doing what they should be doing. And they were doing searches they shouldn't be doing. They were jumping fences they shouldn't be jumping, going into people's backyards. They were pushing the envelope. The culture wasn't right out there. And I said, no, we're going to fix it. And I fired a whole bunch of people. We had some people that were being really lazy and watching movies on duty, and it was a real prevalent thing. No, we're not going to tolerate that. So, I think that those were, early on some things. And how it should work and what I believe in is that it's very simple, is you tell people what the expectations are. You ask them to meet the expectations, and you tell them what you're going to do if they don't meet the expectations, and then you do it. And so it's real simple. There's no secret. Like an example, I guess, is drunk driving. I don't have any tolerance for drunks. And it's a decision people make. And anybody that's ever had anything to drink, knows that no matter how much you've had to drink, that you shouldn't be getting in that car and driving. That you shouldn't be doing whatever it is, okay? Everybody has enough awareness to know that's wrong. So it's a decision. So they make that decision. So we, years ago had a big problem, and we had, 3 in 2 weeks where we had deputies that were driving drunk, off duty. The last one was a guy over in Tampa on Armenia going the wrong way, got in a head-on crash at 3 a.m. with a taxi cab over there. And I said, we're done. So here's the deal, is that, and everybody in the agency from that point forward, and everybody that gets hired from that point forward is put on notice and said that if you drive drunk, is that we're not discussing it. There's no mitigation. There's no anything. If you drive drunk, you're going to be fired. So to me, it's real simple, is that you make a choice. And if you don't want to work here under those rules, then that's your choice. Don't work here. If you want to work here under those rules, then abide by them. And if you don't abide by them, this is what I'm going to do. And I have, without fail, held to that. And I can get up every morning, look in the mirror, and feel very comfortable with it, because I don't make that choice and decision. I told you what the rules are. Follow them. And if you don't, here's what's going to happen. Same thing. We had situations at the jail where we had a whole bunch. Deputies at the jail are required to do checks periodically on the inmates, 15-minute checks, 30-minute checks. So we had a problem. Is that they were falsifying the logs and they weren't doing the checks. That's just pure laziness. There's no hustle in that. That's just pure, I just don't want to get my tail end off the seat and go do the checks I'm supposed to do and log them. So they were falsifying the logs. And so we dealt with it, and we dealt with it. And finally I said, you know what? No. Is that from this point forward, anybody that falsifies a log is automatic 30-day suspension. So that's a month without a paycheck. Guess what?
Haven't had it happen again.
Solved the problem. Yeah. We had a couple of them, but once they saw I was serious about it.
Yeah.
Are there some things that you do that people don't know about that you think that people should know about? Or big misconceptions?
I think yes and no. There's probably a lot of things I do that people don't know that I do, but I don't really want them to know, because I'm not doing it because I want them to know.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think that if you talk to people who know me and know some of the decisions I make, especially about people and personnel and personnel matters and issues that relate to the people of the agency, people think, I don't know, let them judge it. Let somebody else judge me. Not going to judge me, but
we'll judge you.
People,
We're good at that.
People, especially Ricky.
Not just you, everybody.
Correct. Especially Ricky.
There it is.
Because Ricky doesn't have an opinion.
There it is.
Correct.
There it is.
No,
Never.
I think, I think that, people think that I'm hardcore and hard. Maybe, but I'm really not. When it comes to people and individual situations, I do a lot for people, and I should. It's the right thing to do, but I don't want people to know about that because that's not the reason why I do it.
And I happen to agree, just so you know. I think, we all see that, I think, and based on, obviously, what you've said.
The most important thing to me, I don't care what anybody says about anything, is that, and I'm serious about it, I'm very serious about it, is are people treated fairly? And I don't care whether it's in what it is. They walk away from it, and whether it's an internal affairs case and whether somebody was exonerated or whether they're terminated, it doesn't matter what that outcome is. Were they treated fairly, and do they feel like we did the right thing by them, and are we consistent? And sometimes to be fair is to be consistent. To be consistent is to be fair. Is we're dealing with people who are leaving to ask for things. If whatever, I'll bend over backwards, but it's just the right thing to do. But all that should be behind the scenes.
It should be. But there's a lot of things that, we're internal PR too. So, we see things that are going on, have a different perspective than others. And I'm just curious about it because people certainly do have perceptions. I mean, people don't even like to come visit us because of you on the third floor. So we try to convince them it's not a scary place and you're a fun guy. But,
right. I know. I get it. But, some of it's just the nature. It is, as they say, I guess whoever they is, it is a paramilitary environment and it is that. So, some of that all comes into play. But
is what it is.
Is what it is. You try to get people, you get around, try and talk to people and get people to, no, look, we're all just doing a job. I'm no different than anybody else.
I heard, because I used to be an admin down in patrol, that sometimes you will listen over the radio, or I don't know if you're looking at reports or what. And if you see a deputy did something really good, you'll personally call them and talk to them about it and say I heard you handled this really well. And Yeah, no, definitely. And, and even when deputies come in here on the podcast and they say stuff like, well, if the powers that be hear something, somebody should, they get a phone call. No, I'm a big believer.
Now we have a
I think it's awesome.
Right. So no, I'm a big believer in that. No, we want to let people know that, we got a lot of good people that are doing great things. And I try and, if I see something, as much as if there's a problem, I'll certainly, address it and let them know too. But it's not all about that. It's all about, the positives and, sometimes it's a phone call. A lot of times it's an email. That's how people communicate these days anyway. But I'll call them. And sometimes send them a message over the computer in the car. There's a variety of ways. But no, I want people to know. So I do.
Yeah. I think that's really cool. You have such a busy schedule to be able to find some of that day-to-day stuff and be nice job.
Yeah, and we get a lot. And a lot of people don't see it. You guys see it, but most of the people, in fact, the bureau commanders don't even see it. All the public recognition that we get regarding the work that's being done with our people, it isn't just the patrol deputies or even deputies in general. It's across the board with a lot of stuff that people do. And, we send acknowledgement letters and we let to the people who let us know about it, but also so that the people who work here know.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of that. You guys see it, but most people don't know how much there is. And a lot of times I'll get direct emails from people too. So, no, it's really important that the people know that, and again, adages, cliches is that, and I do believe this one rings true. I truly do. And try and right. People don't care what you know until they know you care. And you got to let them know that you care, that you're appreciative of what they're doing, that they're doing a good job, that, they have heart and they have that give a damn and that they're really trying and they're contributing. So you got to let them know, and they need to, and they want to feel good about it, and that people realize that they're recognized, and it's just kind of basic human need, so to speak. But but especially in the workplace, and they want to feel valued, and not just feel valued. They have to, they want to feel it, but they got to be it too. And so if you don't value it, if I don't value them, then there's something wrong. Yeah.
So, and you do get on the road occasionally, not as much as you used to.
There's so much excitement when we hear car went over the radio. Yeah.
You pushed a car out of the road the other night, so heard about that.
Yeah.
But you go out there, and sometimes you go work, on particular busy days, some of the holidays, or perhaps if there's an initiative or something. But do people recognize you when you're out there? Not our members, but like the public.
Oh yeah. It's funny, especially I stop a car and do a traffic stop, and they're like, "Oh man, I must have really done something bad to stop by you." I'm like, "Well, yeah, probably."
Instant tears for me if that happened.
Yeah, it's pretty funny when they do, because and they're like, "Oh my god."
Any notable stories since you've been sheriff out there on the road? I know one because you posted a book on Facebook about it, but anything?
Yeah. I mean, there's some. I mean, I try and get out there when I can, but some of it, and lately, I say lately, really, I mean, really the last couple of years, I've been so busy with other stuff related to school safety, Parkland investigation, school shootings, threat management, those things, and traveling around the state, and that's coming in for some sort of a landing. It'll never end. I'll always be involved in it because I think it's so important. It's probably one of the most important things, most meaningful things, let me put it that way. Let somebody else judge whether it's important, but most meaningful things that I've been involved in. But there's a lot. I mean, going down the street's fun. It's it's why I signed up to why I started doing this 40 years ago. So I enjoy going out there. I don't get out there as much as I like to, but I still get out there, and because that's what it's all about. That's the core. I mean, the basic of job, the basic of what we do is what the patrol deputies and the detention deputies do every day. It's the people who are on the floor in the jail and the people that are on the street in those cruisers taking calls. The rest of it supports all that, because when it goes bad and people need help, those are the people that are on the ground. As I guess it's called ground zero, the deputies in the jail and the people in patrol. That's the core of what we do.
So what do you do for fun?
Well, I go to hockey games. I'm a big Tampa Bay Lightning fan. I do a lot of stuff around the house. Most people probably wouldn't peg that, but I do. Do a lot of work, a lot of stuff outside, inside, getting stuff done. And I go to the gym a lot. I like to work out. Try and go 4 or 5 days a week if I can.
What do you listen to? What do you listen to at the gym besides our podcast when you're working out?
Yeah, nothing. I only listen to the podcast because I got to check on you.
Fair. It's fair.
Yeah. Just like silence.
Because,
it's like silence.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know some people.
Wait, which is better alternative? Our podcast or silence?
I don't know.
I don't want the answer. I know the answer.
That's a tough one.
Yeah. No, at the gym, I'll tell you, a lot of times people come up to me. So I'm like,
Oh. Is that annoying?
It must be.
Now, if you had headphones in, though, they might not.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe you should put some in just...
I know, and people do that, and I could do that, but I don't because I just don't. I could do it. I could just put,
They would never know.
AirPods in.
Still have your silence.
Yeah.
I do it all the
noise
time.
canceling headphones.
Not at the gym, but I'll just put them in so nobody will talk to me.
Yeah, no, but I get people. I mean, it's amazing, really. I mean, people come up to me. I mean, a couple of years ago, I was traveling, and even this year, I mean, I was at the Salt Lake City airport, and a woman came up to me. So this year, my daughter and I took her. Earlier this year, we went to a Chicago Blackhawks game in Chicago, and we're in the arena in downtown Chicago, and people were coming up to me. In Minneapolis, we went there to the Minnesota Wild Tampa Bay Lightning game. So I get it all the time.
Wow.
I don't know.
It's not easy being you.
Yep.
But people are just, and people wanted, now you haven't asked about them, but, I'm not Grady. Okay. So that's we're actually pretty good friends. And people probably wouldn't peg that, but we're good friends. But you think with some of it, if I'm getting that, I can only imagine what he gets.
Really? Yeah.
We should do like a rap video or something. Maybe that'll get you on the Grady level.
Yeah. No, I don't want to be on that level.
Yeah.
Won't be me. But no, I get it all the time.
Yeah. So back to yard work. What is it? You just enjoy making it look good?
No, I don't just want to get yelled at for not doing it.
Who yells at you? Do you have a boss at home?
No, there's no boss. But,
okay.
Somebody's got to get it.
Okay.
No, you just got to maintain it. So no.
Any issue with wasps or anything?
Yeah, they don't like me at all. I get stung. Not good. A couple of years ago, I got stung in the eye. My eye was closed. I couldn't wear my contacts. It was bad. And just a few months ago, I got my whole right hand was swollen. Bad.
What are you doing to those wasps?
I don't know.
Antagonize them.
Yeah, that's a bad situation. That was not good. I mean, my whole right hand, luckily it was my left hand. I'm left-handed, but it was all swollen and had to get on steroids and all kinds of stuff.
If I was trying to do yard work and got injured, that's a sign. You're not supposed to do
inside.
it.
Hire someone.
Go back for more.
Yeah, no, you got to get it done.
Yeah. Did you still have a whole farm at the house? Yeah. Animal wise.
Oh, you have a lot of animals? What do you have?
He loves animals.
That's the rumor.
Yeah. Heard.
Right.
I have an informant.
Don't believe everything you say or everything you hear.
Everything you say. You know what he just said?
That too.
That's true.
That too.
But don't believe everything you hear. Yeah. No, we're down
Don't believe
now.
everything
Yeah, you're
Ricky
down.
says.
How many
What
animals
do you
you
have
got?
now?
Now
What
we're
kinds?
down to 2 dogs and a cat. We had like 6 dogs at one point.
Wow.
I think 6 dogs. I don't know. Oh my God, 6 dogs. I think it was 6.
Are they like
4 cats?
police-looking dogs or
No.
fluffy
Rescue.
dogs?
No, they're all over the place. And like I think we had guinea pigs and rabbits and all kinds.
Oh, dang.
We're on the attrition plan.
So it's working so far for you, but
Yeah.
are there any things, 'cause obviously you are limited on time and things are always happening, but is there anything that you wish you had more time to do besides maybe go out on the road? Is there anything else?
Yeah, probably spend more time with the people, which kind of is, I guess, is consistent with that. Getting out on the road, but getting out into other places within the agency. And you can make the time, you can try and schedule it, but stuff comes up, and just to be able to get around to more of the basic stuff that's done. But you have to also recognize, what your role is, what your responsibility is. So, we have, as people know, we got a big budget. This year will top $500 million. We had some good successes this year in being able to take care of the people with pay, et cetera. But that's because we were able to get the support, and thankfully we had it from the county commission, from the county administrator and others. But doing those kind of things takes time, and it takes meetings and work, and you got to put all that stuff together. So there's a day job,
Right?
And then there's the other stuff you want to try and get to, and you can't always get to some of that other stuff. And I'm very involved with the Florida Sheriff's Association. Chaired the legislative committee for the last 9 years, but it's meaningful because what I'm doing by spending that amount of time and that effort is I'm giving the deputies and all the cops in Florida the tools that they need to be able to do their jobs effectively. The laws that we've been able to get passed over the last few years are phenomenal, especially related to juveniles and gun crime, and even at a national level. So when law enforcement was under attack in 2020, 2021, and it was defund the police and do away with what's called qualified immunity, which is legal protection for the individual officers and deputies. And I've been on the board for Major County Sheriffs of America, which is a national premier law enforcement organization that represents the nation's largest sheriffs. And going to Washington and sitting down with Senator Tim Scott and Lindsey Graham and Cory Booker and these people and negotiating this out and being able to stave off all of these changes. But that takes a lot of time and a lot of work and a lot of commitment, but it's worth it. And those are things that the people don't always see what you're doing, and they don't need to. I don't care what they do. But those are the things that take a lot of time. All that stuff doesn't just happen.
Right. So perhaps time spent doing that is a little bit better than running around the agency on occasion.
But no, I don't say it's better, but that's my job. Because if I'm not doing it, nobody else can do that.
Right.
And so, I generally working 6-7 days a week, but there's only so many hours, and but if I'm not doing that, then I'm not doing what I'm responsible for. So I've got to do that. So I wish there was more time, but these are the things that also allow the people to have the things they need and have the tools and resources they need. And a lot of it's preventing bad things from happening, and making sure that bad laws don't get passed, or in the case where there was that drive to take away the immunity that cops had when they're trying to do the right thing and they nonetheless get sued, and that was a big deal. So, dealing with the immigration issue for a couple of years and going back up and forth in D.C. to deal with that. So, there's a reason why I'm involved in all that stuff. And of course, I go back to it is the school safety issue and Parkland. I would say that of all the things I've done, that's been one of the most challenging, but also one of the most rewarding. And there's a lot of travel, and there's a lot of getting out there in the community and trying to make sure the schools are as safe as we can make them.
So we can't have you say something that maybe the powers that be can get you something because you're the powers that be. But is there, we do ask all of our guests if there's something that the public can do to make your job easier, something that you need. What would that be for you?
I would say their support. And I say the support, I'm not talking about just like blind support, just support us just because, we're the cops and, we should be supported. I think we have to earn it. And I think to earn that confidence, earn that trust, and to support the people that are doing the job. Nobody and no entity, no organization, no profession is perfect. You're always going to have the flaws that we all have, but know that the by and large and the absolute majority of the people doing it are doing it for the right reasons and are looking out for everybody's interests, and so recognize that. And even when there are mistakes, and this is where it's important for us, and it gets back to the transparency, is that bring it to our attention and we're going to address it. We're going to deal with it. And we will listen to those concerns and resolve those things. So, but from a public perception, support the cops on the street because they're there doing the right thing for the right reasons.
And most people have absolutely no clue about some of the things that go on in the community too, which is good because it means somebody's doing their job.
Yeah, no, that's true. A lot of the things that we see and deal with, most people, it's not part of their world, but that's a good thing. Shouldn't be, right? Because some of the things that we deal with, people shouldn't have to deal with, but somebody does, and so let people go about their business, and we'll take care of the rest.
You guys got anything else for him?
I'm good.
All right. Well, thanks, Sheriff, for joining us. We appreciate it. We were going to have you back because there's a lot more we still want to talk about. We want to dive into school safety and some of that stuff, but we'll get you another time for that. We know you're busy, and we appreciate you taking the time and, of course, supporting everything that we do. So, Sheriff Bob Gualtieri, everybody, appreciate you listening, and your feedback is encouraged as always. And if folks have any feedback for us, they can reach out to us.
At Let's56 at PCSOnet.com. That's LETS56 at PCSOnet.com.
Well done. Thanks for listening, everybody.
Thank you.